You know, there aren't a lot of Canadians that have a natural tough guy accent. Ronnie Garvin, everything he said, he sounded like it was like almost standoffish.
Yes. And you know, not only with the accent, but the expression on his face, and then you'd watch him in the ring and you go, I'll just be over here. I don't want to him. It was scary to work with him, and I knew he was working with me. But when he made his comeback in Charlotte, I've thrown powder in his eyes. He's already gotten juice for me for the knucks, so he's bleeding. And we're inside a cage, and finally he jerks me down off the cage, and he gets on top of me, and he's standing over me, and he's going to throw the hands of stone down to the forehead, right? And as I looked at the look on his face, I swear to God, that must have been what Jack the Ripper looked like when he was about to dive in on fucking. It was like, God damn it, I'm scared. And boom, he threw three of them. I never felt any of the three of them. And then he snatched me around the neck, throttling me with the intent to kill. And I never felt that. And then the referee counted three, and the doors opened, and the boys came in to save me. But he was very believable, very convincing.
Which Ronnie Garvin do you prefer? Ronnie Garvin with kind of the floppy hair, or Ronnie Garvin with the flat top?
You know, actually, Ronnie from, what was it, 1983 maybe, in Georgia, that period of time through the end of the Crockett years was the closest thing to the real Ronnie Garvin, because he dropped the gimmick he'd had in the 70s as a heel, and then in Southeastern he would kind of look sometimes like a fucking hippie, and he had dark hair. But a hippie in terms of he'd dress in a fucking tie-dyed t-shirt and jeans, whatever the fuck. But Ronnie Garvin of that 80s period, when he was just working out in the gym and going in the ring and stretching job guys and having those physical matches with Flair and working that style, that was the hands of stone, the whole nine yards. He was an incredible worker to make you believe two guys were having a fucking struggle. And those matches with Flair, even in a TBS studio, where it sounds like rifle shots when they're smacking each other. And just it looks like they're trying to gouge each other's eyeballs out, like this fucking match has gotten out of hand type of thing. People have overlooked that because it's not as celebrated as some of the other stuff.
It's not just Flair. The other day after we heard about Black Bart, I went to look for some Black Bart footage just to, for the first time in a while, watch some, and it was him against Ron Garvin at the TBS studio. Ronnie Garvin slapping the shit out of him. Just bam, bam, bam.
And, and that's the thing, is that the people believed in him somewhat, and he believed in a lot of that too. And he and Orndorff in Smoky Mountain Wrestling had great in-ring physical matches, because the Orndorff liked that shit also. But they knew how to work too, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I like that because it was more natural. But I mean, remember, he was, really bleach blonde with Ron and Terry Garvin with manager Jim Garvin. There's Terry in a goddamn negligee. And Jimmy Garvin is dressed in like a skinny Oliver Humperdinck, because he's just happy to be there. He's 18 years old. And there's Ronnie, probably one of the toughest guys in any locker room, and he's got the combed over long blonde hair and wearing a fucking purple jacket. It didn't fit. When he finally blossomed as a single, I think that was the best Ronnie.
When I first became a fan in 1989, one of the first feuds, in the middle of all the big things like Ultimate Warrior versus the Heenan family and Hogan versus Savage and Zeus, Ron Garvin, rugged Ronnie Garvin, versus Greg the Hammer Valentine. Which is interesting when you think about like 1989, 1990 WWF, all those gimmicks, you never think about those two, but they had a program where all of a sudden on TV, they had a match. I think it went like this. They had a match. For no good reason, Shivani was at ringside because they were trying to find a way to use him on the shows. And he interviewed Greg Valentine. He challenged Ronnie Garvin to a loser leaves town match, or a loser must retire match. Ronnie Garvin loses. They make him a referee, a troubleshooting referee, which was entertaining. He was good as the babyface referee, fucking over the heels. Then they made him a ring announcer at SummerSlam, where he started to insult Greg Valentine. And then they finally had the blow-off match at SummerSlam. And again, in a sea of gimmicks, to me as a kid, that match worked. That match registered. And it had the one funny moment when Ronnie Garvin blocked the figure four because he had one of those, what was it called that Greg
Shin guard.
Valentine, the shin guard. No, but Greg Valentine had a specific name for it. I can't remember what it was.
Oh, God. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But he had one too, and he was, making faces at Greg Valentine while in the figure four. But yeah, underrated feud, I think, Ronnie Garvin and Greg Valentine.
Here's another thing. Some people may not know that Ronnie Garvin's nickname in Southeastern wrestling in, 79, 77 probably, 77, 78, 79, and then he broke off and went to ICW, was the one-man gang.
Yeah.
One-man gang, Ronnie Garvin. They broke in, big kid named Crusher Broomfield, and when he left and went to Mid-South Wrestling, that's when he started using the name One-Man Gang. But that's where it came from.
You want to talk about one-man gang Ronnie Garvin, specifically in Knoxville, and the footage ended up being used forever on ICW TV. The footage of him and Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
Which is like the biggest ass-kicking I've ever seen Andre take from Ronnie Garvin in that match. And Ronnie Garvin's a tough guy, but what was he, 5'10", 5'11", maybe?
No. I don't want to swear, but 5'9" is what I would say. But,
oh, wow.
Well, maybe 5'10". But at the same time, 230 pounds or whatever in fucking shape. He wasn't in the lean shape in Knoxville that he was later on for Crockett, but he was always in shape and he could always go and he could do that shit. But here's the thing. It was, as I recall, and I'm willing to let a Knoxville historian correct me, but Ronnie Garvin had been working a deal with Roy Lee Welch. Remember the Welch family? Roy Lee was, God damn it, the nephew of, never mind. It'll take us too long down
Roy Lee was Lester's son.
Roy Lee was Lester's son. There you go. And Ronnie Garvin, and somewhere or another, Ronnie Garvin said, I could beat you and any of your fucking friend. One of those type of deals. And they booked it, Andre the Giant and Roy Lee Welch against Ronnie Garvin. It's the only time Andre ever had a handicap match where he was the two-guy team, right? But they did, because Andre was French and Ronnie was French-Canadian, he got him to, and he respected him. He got him to do a little deal. I don't know that Andre knew that film camera was up in the fucking bleachers.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. But he may not have known it was filmed, but he also liked Ronnie Garvin because they were both French-Canadian. Yeah, well, exactly. Not French-Canadian, but French.
Well, but Andre had moved to Quebec and lived there for years. So, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, yeah, Ronnie's beating him up in the corner and Andre's selling, and then Ronnie hit him with the table in the ring and fucking all this shit. And we used that in Smoky Mountain Wrestling 15 years later, that footage to,
for the Night of Legends.
Publicize Ronnie. Yeah. But nevertheless, so that's the thing, is that Ronnie was very legitimate, and, and also if you go back and do look at the matches he had with Flair in 86, 87 on TBS or house shows or whatever. I don't know what's out there on YouTube. Remember, he's in his early 40s at that point, and in that kind of condition and going that hard for that long. He was amazing. That's why he'd take the job, guys. And because he didn't want to work with a guy that was just coming in, flabbier than a fucking flat tire, and Mike Jackson is, smarting him up and giving him a ride up there, right? He did not, how did Thez put it? He didn't brook that type of shenanigan. So he would take them down and put them in holes, whether they liked it or not, and take their own fingers and stick them up their own noses and make them pick their own, because nobody fucked with Ronnie Garvin, right? He'd slap the sugar on you. And then when you got Garvin and Wyndham against the Midnight Express, or Garvin versus Flair, or any of his main event matches on television, then he was one of the best workers in the fucking locker room. He could sell and he could fight back, and his shit looked good. And you knew it was there when he was exchanging the chops with Wahoo McDaniel or whatever. They were fucking hitting each other harder than I'd care to be hit. But like I said, when I worked with him, he's throwing punches at my head that I'm selling because I can feel his hand and they look like they're killing me. But I'm okay. He was very, very good. How did we get started with that?
Well, we were talking about Ronnie Garvin, but hey, you brought up Roy Lee Welch. You know, the first time I ever heard of him, Eddie Mansfield's IWF aired in New York in like 1992, 1993. And they're building him up on that show like he's a legend I should know. And I'm like 12. I've never heard of this guy. And I don't even know what his name is because they keep going, Roy Lee Welch. I'm like, he's a royal? What are they saying exactly? Roy Lee? Is that one word? I never knew, until years later his name was Roy Lee Welch. I had no idea who the fuck he was. They were talking about him like he was an all-time legend.
Well, he was in Eddie Mansfield's IWF or whatever. I think would have been late in Roy Lee's career, and he was probably trying to help him get it off the ground because he was in Florida too.
I didn't even see him wrestle. I didn't even see him wrestle. It was just like they were building up. He was going to be there. Like this was a big thing.
I don't think it lasted that long. It wasn't that big of a thing. But Roy Lee's brother Jackie wasn't a bad worker. He was a good baby face. He spent some time working for Jarrett in 78, I think. And he was a nice fellow.
What'd you think of Ricky Fields?
I never saw much of them, the Fields brothers, because they were in Louisville like sometimes in 72, 73 before I started going to the matches live, and they weren't really featured in Memphis after Jarrett took over the book, maybe for who knows what reasons. So I never saw much of the Fields brothers.